Hello, everyone. I'm John Herzog again. We're going into our second session today. What I wanted to do was to have for you um, the things we'll be discussing regarding lesson in your textbook, and we will also be getting into much of lesson 3, or what they call tutorial 3 in your text. The discussion today is going to be about what they call referential integrity. It takes a long time to talk about it. It only takes a few minutes to actually do it. But I want you to understand what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. So that's our first move here, is to get into that, what they call defining table relationships. Take a look here at our screen. If you remember with our landscaping company, this Belmont landscaping firm, we have, just to remind you, we have agreements, and these agreements or contracts that this company has in this example, they assign a customer to those agreements. Those customers are given a number, and those customers' information are in the customer table. Now, when I want you to take a look here, let's suppose, for example, I want to enter in a new agreement, and I come clear down here, and I put in a new one. In the particular case we have right now, we do not have a relationship between these two tables. We do not have any kind of referential integrity. And I need to explain what that is, and I'm going to demonstrate it now. For example, let's suppose we come up with contract 3111, and we're going to assign it to customer 12. Let's assign it to customer 2000 or 20,000, 20000. And we go in there and we say that the contract, let's say, is for $6,000, and let's suppose it's today's date, and let's suppose it's also renovation of a playground. Now, the problem with this right now is that there is no such customer. Now, if you take a look back on the customer table, you'll see that all the customers' numbers range from 11,000. Well, they don't go out of the 11,000 range here. They actually go as high as 11,088. Microsoft is messing up here. They're freezing up right now. But anyway, you get the idea here. What I'm saying here is that record I just entered in was bogus. It is not good that it permits me to put in a bogus customer. Now, again, when we scroll down, we will see here that we go as high as 11,088, but it permitted me to do it. That's because these two tables do not have referential integrity. But we don't want that. We want them to definitely have referential integrity, so we want to set it up so they do. We do not, in other words, want this bogus record to be out there. We do not want to let anybody entering data into our database to accidentally put in bogus customer numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this. We're going to delete it. I'm going to make it so that if I put a customer in, it will stop me if that customer number is bogus. So that's what I'm saying. It will go from this agreement table over to the customer table, and it will look for the number I enter in as a customer. And if it says, hey, you just assigned customer so-and-so to that, and that customer doesn't exist, that's bogus. If that happens, it will tell you, and it will stop you, and will not even permit you to do it. That is what we mean by referential integrity. It's a very long definition. You can look up what it means, but the definition won't explain it to this depth. So here is how we achieve it, and there are several steps. And again, you need to go through each of these steps. If I am going to put in referential integrity between these two tables, the first thing we have to do is to make sure that each of these tables has the fields that will line up. Okay, so remember, in this particular database, we already have that. Those two fields that will line up, or link up, as we say, are the primary key, which is in the customer table, the primary key of the customer table, and the foreign key in the child table. Okay, now you have to understand a few other terms I'm going to give you. All of these terms, by the way, will be quiz questions, so please take note. When we have two tables that relate like this, one of them is what they refer to as the parent, and the other is the child. For example, one customer can have more than one agreement, just as one parent can have more than one child. Therefore, between these two tables, the customer table is the parent, and the agreement is the child. Now, you'll notice here in this relationship we have an invoices table. One agreement can spawn many invoices. So if we're looking at the relationship between agreement and invoices, The agreement table then between those two tables would be the parent, and the invoices would be the child. So you need to understand one parent can have more than one child, just as one customer can have more than one agreement. That makes the customer the parent, the agreement the child. An agreement can have more than one invoice, just as a parent can have more than one child. So between those two tables, the parent is the agreement and the child is the invoices. So we need to remember that. So now when you go to set referential integrity, we need to make sure that the two fields are going to link up between customer and agreement in this example do exist. That's the first thing. And we have already done step one. There are fields. And the primary key is always set in the parent table. Take a look at the design view as we've showed you in the last class, or the last session, how to create a primary key. When I create a table, I have to make sure that there is a key next to the primary key field. In this case, the primary key is the customer number. I come up here to primary key and I can turn it on and off. That is what makes it the primary key. I'm going to close and save it for a minute. The field it links up with in the agreement table is not a primary key. Notice we do not have that one set up. The customer ID there is not going to be a primary key. So the primary key always is assigned of the two fields between the primary key and the the primary key and the foreign key. The primary key is set in the parent table when you have those two fields link up. In customer, again, we have done just that. We have made between those two fields, customer number and customer ID. Those are the two we're going to link up. Between those two fields, the one it is set as the primary key is in the customer table. Why? Because the customer table is the parent table. That's the first step. Step two, we got to make sure that both of them are the same field type. Notice they're not the same name. They do not have to be the same name. So in this case, the primary key is customer number. Over here, we're calling it customer ID. They are the two we'll link up, but they do not have to be the same name. Step three, we must make sure that they are the same field type. Now, by the way, in your syllabus and in your assignments sheet, remember your assignments are also in Pilot. Your assignments are reminding you of these steps. So it's important to, because they're also in your textbook, but I think the one I have is better than the textbook one. Okay, so again, you make sure that you have two fields that will link up. Step two, you make sure that one of them is set as the primary key, which we did. And step three, we now have to make sure that they are both the same field type. Notice, please, in this case, they are not the same field type. In customer, the primary key is customer number. It's a text field. But in agreement, we have it set as a number field, and we need to fix that. I recommend that the customer number here be not 255 characters. I'm going to go down there and change that from 255. We're going to change that down to 10 characters. You usually don't need more than 10 characters for an identifier like that. Again, I really don't recommend that you make a primary key a text field where you have to type in the number every time. It's really better to have them as an auto number field, but the author of this book has gone this way, so we're just going to run with it. The times you would use a text field for primary key is when it's social security numbers or phone numbers and things like that. Anyway, going back now, so we know that that's going to be the primary key there. We go to agreement, and we're going to go to the customer ID. We have to change that to text. Now, by the way, if you have two fields that are going to hook up, and they're both number fields, they not only have to be the same field type, but they must also be the same length. In other words, if one of them is long integer, the other one must be long integer. If one of them is double, the other must be double. If it's just integer, the other must be integer, and so on. In this particular case, both of the fields are text, so we don't have to worry about that. When they are text fields, they do not have to be the same size. So we've now done step 3 here in our setting up of referential integrity. in there. I'm going to go ahead and close and save this now, the actual tables here, and we're going to now see if in fact we have bogus data. In other words, do we already have some customers entered in the agreement table that do not exist? Now, one of the ways you can do that is by using the query wizard. This is something that we also talk about, but to make a query using a query wizard, this is a different kind. The one we did the other day was a select query, which was very basic in the last session. But in this session, we're going to do one that just says, simply find me so if we go to the create screen, we're going to go to create, and give me a second here. Again, Microsoft is freezing up a little bit here. Create query wizard. We're going to do the kind at the very bottom here called the find unmatched query. And that's simply saying, find me a customer number entered into one of those agreements in this example that is not in or does not have a match in the customer table. So we click find unmatched query wizard and we click OK. Then we go in and we say, okay, what are the two tables we're dealing with? So the table that contains the records you want the query results in basically here is going to be agreement. We're going to click agreement because that's what we're really checking for. Which of these do not have a match in the customer table? Well, fortunately, agreement, because it's alphabetical, is the first one chosen. That's already there. So we click next, and now we're saying which table contains related records. So in other words, we've already selected customers. You know, they're giving this example here, but we're now saying we wanted to go checking the customer table. We want to see if there's anything bogus there. So we click on customer and we click next. Now, if we go here, it's simply saying, what are the two fields that connect? Well, we're simply saying, find me fields in agreement that do not match fields in customer, but we're looking strictly by the customer ID. Do not forget to click customer ID here. So we're saying, find me a customer ID entered in the agreement that is not over here in the customer table. Now, once you've chosen the fields, you must click this little button in the middle here that's got the less than, equal to, greater than, which simply says these are the two we need to match. Then we simply click next, and it says, all right, what fields do you want to display? In other words, well, I want to see the fields that, you know, actually we're going to need to see the customer number here and the customer, the customer ID rather, the customer ID and the contract number in question. I want to see which of those has bogus data. Really, that's all I need in this case. So we're simply saying next. We run it and we say, okay, these are agreements without matching customer, and that's good. That's what we want to see here. So we click finish. Now you'll see here when it runs it, it says we're okay. There are no problems here. All of the customers, remember the one I put in that was bogus, it's basically, I took it out. So that's why it's not showing here. Now, that's how you find out if there's bogus data. I'm going to close that now. Let's do it now with the invoices, because we're going to have to connect the invoices to the agreement table. So now let's see if any of the invoices entered have bogus agreements. So you take a look here. We have, I'm going to open up the invoices table here. You notice that these invoices, are like this first invoice here, it's saying that's because, or that invoice is written regarding contract number 3011. The next one is written, the second invoice here, invoice 2021, is written basically in respect to or related to contract number 3012. So we're simply saying, did somebody enter in some bad contract numbers? We're going to do the same thing. Let's go ahead and close that. We're going to go back in here, and we're going to make another one of those query wizards. Let's go to create query wizard. In this case, we're going to find unmatched query wizard again. We're going to click OK. We're going to say now, show me the invoices. I want to know what invoices have bogus contract numbers. So we click invoices first. In other words, you're going to choose the child table. You're going to choose the child table, and we're going to click invoices and next. And then we're going to simply say, now we would like to check that with the agreement table. Well, that's the parent table. It's already selected because it's alphabetical, and we click next again. Now here we're simply saying, hook up the contract number with the contract number. Now we then click and make sure that we click the little less than, equal to, greater than to make sure that these are the ones that will be checked. Now I don't know if you noticed, we have already checked, I already checked ahead of time. We didn't do it together in this session, but those have also been checked to see if they're the same type, which they are. So let's go ahead and try that now. Let's go ahead and click next and tell it we want to see the invoice number and the contract number to see if any of those are bogus. Now if we click next and finish, you'll notice here that it says there are 24 bogus invoices here. Notice, please, for example, the contract number here, 3020, has been used several times, and it does not exist in the agreement, in the contract table. So we have to get those out of there. And ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, if you have bogus stuff, all you really got to do is simply delete them. So remember how we delete records. I can delete a bunch of records by simply clicking on the select all up top here, then hitting the delete key, and that will delete all of the records that have been chosen. So all of those bogus records now have been removed. So now we can set referential integrity between those two tables as well. Let's now close. We're going to save the changes, yes, and now we have removed all of the bogus data here. You see, we'll have the invoices in there, but those invoices have had the bogus contract numbers removed. There were a bunch of them there, like 3022 or whatever, and they did not exist in the agreement table. So we got rid of those. So now we are ready to do our next step here, and we are ready now to set the referential integrity. Now this is a step everybody misses. You got to remember that before you set the referential integrity, you have to close those tables. This is a very common question here. So do not have those tables open when you go to set the referential integrity. Then you go to the database tools and you go to relationships. That's where we are at this point. Now again, this list of steps is also on your syllabus as a reminder here. So yeah, Microsoft is acting up here. Bless their hearts. Anyway, that's going to shut that file down. Anyway, just highlighting that little thing there was more than it could handle, I guess. Anyway, I got a very good computer here, but Microsoft 2013 just is known for shutting down here and there, and we're sorry. Anyway, but now we've got those two items there. So now let's go ahead and set the referential integrity. We go to Database Tools and Relationships. Now, I recommend, ladies and gentlemen, that we go in there and we go ahead and set all the fields in there. And I think it's good to, the tables that we're going to set relationships for. I recommend that you have the parent and the child from left to right. So in other words, we're going to do customer parent and click add, and then we're going to set the relationship of agreement on the right. Now, we're going to set the one for invoices, and that will put it to the right of agreement. And then we close. It is not mandatory you do that. It is simply a good idea. It just helps it. It just makes it easier to view this. Now, we are now ready to set the relationships. You can resize these just as we talked about it in the queries, just like you can a clip art. But now we're going to click and drag customer number down and over the top of customer ID. Do not click and drag straight across. Let me try this again here. Do not click and drag customer number right over to contract number. We know those are not going to match. That is another very common mistake. Again, another common mistake is that people have the fields or the tables open. Make sure that they're closed and come over here and click and drag customer number over to customer ID. Then when you do, you click referential integrity. Now, I also recommend you click Cascade Update Related Records and then click Create. And you'll see it'll say 1 to infinity. One customer can have an infinite number of agreements. Let's do the same thing now with the agreement table and the invoices. We're going to click and drag contract number down and over to the contract number over here. Remember, do not go straight across. Let me do that again. Do not go straight across over to invoices. Don't hook those two up. You're going to get a mess here. Click and drag contract number over and down to contract number, and make sure you did it right. You'll see contract number will show up here. Then you know you got it. Enforce referential integrity and cascade update related fields. If you click on those and click create, now we have created those two relationships. If you get an error saying that the tables do not meet integrity rules, that means you didn't do those query wizards. That means you didn't check for bogus data. So now, if you take a look here, you will see that we have done basically all of the steps here. We just did, of course, going to the database tools. Then we clicked and dragged the primary key from the parent key in the parent table to the foreign key in the child table. Then we click check referential integrity and cascade update related fields. Then we click create, and then we simply close the relationship screen. So we've done all 9 steps now. And I want to give you a little insight. Why is it that when we did this, that we in fact, if you want to redo some of these relationships, just double click on the little line between them there. Why did we click Cascade Update Related Fields? Here's why. For example, let's use the pizza place, for example. Let's suppose that they set the primary key up there as your phone number, and all those phone numbers would be your customer number, and they would hook up with your orders for your pizzas, for example. Well, if you would change your telephone, and then what's going to happen is, well, they wouldn't be able to change their record of your telephone number because it would mess up the orders. As we say, the parent table would orphan all the children over here. We could, what would we, if we change the number here, then what would happen to all the orders over here? But when you tell it to update, when we check that second cascade, just forget the word cascade. Just in other words, tell it to update related fields. That means if you change the customer number or whatever that primary key is, it will go over here to the child table. It will find every one of those agreements or orders or whatever they may be, and it will change them here for you automatic. That's what that means. Now, by the way, it's not a good idea. Usually very seldom do we do the cascade delete records. If I were to click that, then if I were to delete a customer, it would come over here and delete all of their agreements. It's not a good idea to set that, because if you do, you run the risk of somebody accidentally ripping out a lot of important records about customers if they were to accidentally delete a customer. So that's why we don't want that to happen. So that is how we set referential integrity. The next thing that I want to do now is to show you how to import data from another source. As I showed you in the first session here, we made a table from scratch. But what if somebody says, hey, I have a spreadsheet here that I've been putting my data in for years, and I don't want to have to retype that. Or sometimes you will get something sent to you not from a spreadsheet, but from text, because some people have been putting their data over the years into a mainframe, and the best that a mainframe can do is to bring things in from a text file. It can only spit it out into a text file. Or sometimes other people have made some databases of their own, but they just didn't structure it very well. I have a lot of clients of my own. If you ever need work, let me know. But I'm saying if you have people you've set these things up for, sometimes they'll say, well, so-and-so made me a database in Access, but it's not very good. Again, they have records out there you want to pull in. So that's what I want to show you how to do with this. These tables into this database. Although we already have agreement and customer and invoices, I'm just going to show you how they were imported. Now, in order to, let's go step by step. First, we're going to go to external data. That's your first move here. So when you click on them, you're going to go to, and again, this is all in your textbook. And by the way, we're at page AC81. We're going to pretty much get through most of this lesson here and then get back into, even into some of chapter 3 here. Anyway, at this point, we're going to go to external data, and we're going to decide which one we're going to do. We're just going to start from left to right. We're going to do the Excel spreadsheet first. So if you click Excel, and then you basically tell it, we're going to import an Excel spreadsheet. You have to go find it. Now, in this case, we put it on the desktop. You have to know where they are before you do this. So we click Browse, and we go over here, and we say, okay, go find me the spreadsheet. If I click Desktop, you'll notice here when I double-click Desktop that it's not showing me the other stuff because it's only looking for spreadsheets. I've intentionally got a lot of garbage out there to say, oh, there's invoice. That's the one we want. But notice it does not show anything but spreadsheets. So we click in, that's because we chose spreadsheets. So we click Invoices and we click Open. Now, basically, we are not going to append and we're not going to link, although I could link to this, meaning somebody may just want to use a spreadsheet here, and we may just want to link to it. So they change their spreadsheet, your table will change. Change your table, their spreadsheet will change. That is possible. But we're not going to send them to a new one. We're just going to make a brand new table. So we click Import and we click OK. Now basically it's saying, well, here's that spreadsheet, and notice up here it says, which sheets do we have? I showed you a minute ago it has only one sheet, and the tab was named Invoices. Oftentimes it'll say sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, but here it just says Invoices. So it's saying, yeah, that's the sheet in that workbook we want. So we click it, and then we click Next. Now, we have already decided that the first row of that spreadsheet does in fact contain our column headings or our field names. So we make sure that this stays checked. Do not uncheck it. So we click Next. And now here is where we decide what our field types are going to be. And basically this is set up so it's pretty much going to stay the way it is. But sometimes you've got it to where it isn't good. Sometimes they'll set stuff up as sometimes these numbers, for example, they'll set it up as a number field when you really want it to be a text field. So we click on these field names and we change the field types if we so choose. In this case, we will not change them, but in many cases we might want to. And please notice that there are fields over here you may want to check. But then we say, okay, those are fine. We click Next. Now it's asking us what we want for our primary key. Well, in this case, we've already decided that we want the invoices to be the primary key. So we say we want to choose our own key. We go to the middle radio button there. We say invoice number. It automatically put invoice number there because it usually assumes that the first field on the left is to be your primary key. You click Next, and you say, what do you want to name this table? Well, we're going to name it Invoices. And it's generally going to automatically default to naming it whatever the sheet in the workbook was, which was Invoices. So we say, okay, let's click Finish. And saying, do you want to overwrite our Invoices table? In this case, we're going to say no. We don't want to overwrite it because that would mess us up. We already set the referential integrity. But if we said yes, indeed, it would have created, we're going to click Cancel now, but in fact, it would have given us the Invoices table, and there is how we import a spreadsheet. Now let's try to import an Access table from an Access database. We're going to click Access up here now, and same thing, we're going to go looking for the table agreement that is inside the Orin database. So we click Browse, and it's going to take a few minutes here. We go back to the desktop. Once again, we have to scroll up here to get to it. We're going to go to the desktop, and we're going to then come over here and scroll to see if Orin is in there. Yeah, there it is. And notice, again, I put all these databases on the desktop. Again, it's not showing spreadsheets now. It's showing all the databases. Well, we want Orin, and we click Open. Now, again, we don't want to link to it, although you can. That is how you would link to another database, which is very common. But we click OK now, and we see it's going to give us a list of all the tables. Well, if you saw a minute ago, there's only one table in there, and it's called Agreement. Do not forget to click on it. That's a mistake people make in homework too. Don't forget to click on it. And then you click OK. If you don't click on it, it's going to say, oh, you chose nothing. So click on Agreement and then click OK, and you will see it will pull in the item. Now you'll notice it also asks, do we want to save the import steps? We're going to say no. We don't want to check that. The only time you would do that is if, in fact, you want to make this a routine process, where you say, I want to import this database every day from this other database. There are some times you would need to do that, but we're not going to. So we click Close. Notice what's different here. In this case, unlike the spreadsheet, it just added it, and it named it Agreement 1. You see, now with the spreadsheets, it says, oh, we're going to overwrite the one that's there. This one didn't do that. I just want you to see the difference. See, here are the same basic tables here. The agreement and the agreement one that we just brought in, they're the same data, but again, they're virtually the same, but it adds it. It will not overwrite it. That is a difference. So I'm going to delete it. We don't have a duplicate there, but that is how you import a table from a database. Last but not least is how to import a text file. Now there's other ways you can get external data, and don't forget, we're looking at the import and link. Don't come over here to the export. That's different. To bring it in, we have to import. Don't get those two mixed. Also, please notice that you can bring down what they call an ODBC database, and there are other different types, XML files. There's other kinds of things you can bring in, but the most common, and all we're going to deal with this term, are the Excel, Access, and text file. We're going to now import that text file I just showed you. So let's click text file. And again, it's going to ask us where it is. Well, we know it's on the desktop. So we click Browse, and we come over here to the desktop. And we go looking now for the text files. Notice again that there are no spreadsheets or databases. There's only one text file in this case, and it's the customer one that I put out there for you. So we click Customer, and we click Open, and we got the same procedure. Do we want to link to it? Yes, you can link to a text file. I have clients do that all the time. We can take this and send it into append means do we want to send it into something else? Well, no, we don't want to do that. We're going to leave it right on the top, and we click OK. Now from here, it's very similar to what we did with the spreadsheet. But the first thing it asks us is it delimited or fixed width? Fixed width means is it already set up so that the fields are designated? Well, it's not fixed width, it's delimited. In a text file, you can separate fields by quotation marks and commas and tabs and semicolons. In this case, if you click Next, you will see that it already figured it out, that it's already assuming that it's those commas that are separating the files, which I showed you earlier is the case. Now, we could have done it with semicolons every time you spit things into a text file. I have a client right now that it's spitting it out there and it's separating them with semicolons. But in this case, it's comma. So we're going to commas them when we choose there. And notice when I click comma, it does it for you. It figured it out. But it automatically puts those field markers in there and separates them automatically for you. So now you click Next. Now in this case, different from the spreadsheet, a lot of the text files often do not have a top row that's going to give you what you need. So we have to come across here and we have to change the field names. I'm going to click on field 1. That is going to be, in this case, the customer number, which they called it. We click on field 2, and that is the company that this Belmont Landscaping helps. Click on field 3, and that is going to be the contact first name. Now please notice what I'm doing here. I kind of glossed over that. But when I click on the column here, I come up here and change the field name rather, but I can also change the type. In some cases, I may say, I don't want that field. It's in there, I could say skip it, but I don't want to skip any of these in this example. I click field 4, and I change that. I come up here in the field name, and I name that contact last name. I want to keep it as a short text. And then I click over here on field 5. That's going to be obvious. You can kind of surmise what they are. This, of course, is going to be the telephone of the customer. Click on field 6, and that is going to be the address. It's a good idea to call it customer address, customer telephone. But because sometimes you have telephones for customers and suppliers and employees, and you have these databases that get very complex. But in this case, we're not going to do that, but it's really recommended. Do not forget that you have to scroll to the right using this little scroll bar because you could miss a bunch of fields here. So don't forget to do that in the homework. Click on now field 7, and we would never leave it as field 7. There's a few examples. I've got a client right now that we have to keep them numbered that way, but generally you would always give them the name of the content. In this case, for example, it'd be city, and it's going to be short text. We leave that be. Click on the next field. You have to kind of really get close in there. That's a real tiny one there, and that field 8 is going to be obviously the state. And field 9 is going to be the zip code. And field 10 is going to be the email. Now, normally we would make that a hyperlink, but sometimes we'll deal with that later. But for now, we're just going to leave it as a text field. We're going to call it the email. Okay, now we click Next. Notice, please, that it's asking us about the primary key. Again, this is very similar to when we brought in the spreadsheet. So we click Choose My Own Primary Key. It's going to put the first one on the left, which is customer number, and that's perfect. We click Next, and it's going to name the table after the text file. Remember, the spreadsheet named it after the Sheet tab. The database named it whatever it was already, so that's not a problem. So we say, yeah, we're ready. We click Finish. Again, it's going to ask us, do we want to overwrite? Now, again, we're going to say no in this case. Normally you wouldn't have to deal with that because we already have the customer in there. But the agreement didn't do that. It adds it in there since that was from a database. So now we have shown you how to bring in the tables from other databases or from a spreadsheet, we brought in spreadsheet, text file, and database. So now that takes us up through, we have covered in this class so far everything up through tutorial number 2. Now our next move is to go into lesson 2 or tutorial 3. I want to show you some basic querying again to kind of refresh your memory, but then we're going to get very sophisticated with it here. And we're going to do much of, if you look at the syllabus, you'll see that this week we cover tutorial 2 and part of 3. Please notice that, again, we will be doing the quizzes. Basically, they will be covering a lot that we do in a specific recording session. So anyway, let's continue on now. We're going to now do some simple queries and then build on them. In order to do a query, we click Create, and then again, we're going to go to Query Design in this case. We're not going to do the Query Wizard from now on because the Query Wizard is nice, but it kind of restricts you on what you want to do here. What I want to do is to show you how to do some of the basic queries you're going to be doing in the homework. So if we simply click on Create Query, we get this screen here. We're going to double-click Customer and Agreement, and then we click Close. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do some queries here that are very, very similar to what they're asking you to do in the homework. So we're going to do the first few problems from your case problem and get as far as we can. And then the next session we'll finish up what we don't in this session. So we're going to do one very similar to what they're doing, and we're going to name the queries in this case, like problem 3, problem 4, and so forth, from your case, from your textbook, so that it'll be very similar there, and so you kind of be able to match them up. You'll see what we're doing here. So we're going to make a query here, and this is not going to be the same, obviously. It's just going to be similar. So we're going to ask you to bring, in this case, in this example, the customer number. Just double-click customer number and double-click customer name, and notice that it brings it out there for you when you double-click it. And then we're going to have the contact last, contact first. Then we come over here, we're going to have the contract amount and the signing date. So again, and then we're going to close this little property sheet for now. We don't need that right now. But when we go in there, we're going to put in the fields that they ask for. That's the first thing that they will do. So let's now do what they're asking us to do in the 4th and 5th items of your case. They're asking you to create the query. We put the fields in there. And now they're asking us to sort it. And then they're going to have you change some data. See, it is possible for you to change data in these actual queries. Actually, some queries you cannot update. You cannot change the data. But in this one, you'll be able to because we have no groupings or anything, as we'll talk about later. So they're asking us now to sort. So here's how you sort. You simply click Ascending in the field from left to right that you want to sort by first. And then you come over here and you sort by ascending in the one to the right. Now, this is what they would call the primary sort and then the secondary sort. But the idea here is if you want to sort by last name and then first name, they must be in that order from last to first. Then if you run the query, you will see that it is sorting by last name. So that is very similar to what they'll ask you to do in that first homework there. When you run it, they're asking you to make some modifications. Suppose, for example, I come over here and I change this so it says, instead of Kalamazoo, I can type in here whatever. I'm going to do the company name. I'm going to put in here Herzog and Associates. So that's all they're asking to do in that one part, is just simply run the query and then to type in data. It just shows, indeed, you can type data in there. with a query in many cases. Now we're going to go, or they may ask you to change some data. The sixth item in case three that they're going to ask you to do then is they're going to have you put in some criteria, which we've done before. Remember, come up here to the design view. We're going to come up there and we're going to click in here. We're going to put in some criteria. For example, if I come up here, I scroll down, I'm going to double click city. If I add that to the query here, I come over here and I'm going to type in the word Holland. That will be the criteria saying just show me the customers and their agreements from Holland. So we run it. And so basically that is what they're asking you for there. But another thing they can do here is they say, let's put something else in it. Let's come over here to the left and go to redesign. We're going to say, show me all the contracts from Holland that are greater than $5,000. Now, we do that but by the greater than sign. Notice here it's the greater than 5,000 is in the criteria line. Now, what I'm about to tell you is real important here. If I run that, you'll notice here that it will show me only those that are greater than 5,000 from Holland, but both criteria have to be correct. I want you to notice a couple other things here. If I had put dollar signs here instead of putting in the raw number, if I put in a 5,000 with a dollars, you've got a problem. Don't do that. It'll give you an error. So if I click, that's what I'm saying, don't do that. You got to make sure you put in raw data if you're talking about a currency or a number field. Also notice that the reason that both of those had to be true is because they're on the same line. No, let me run it again here. So if you'll see here, I run it, both Holland and greater than 5,000 must be true about this particular case or it will not show. Watch what happens here when I move the word Holland. I'm going to move it down to the OR line. Can you see the OR line right here? When you do that, if I click Run Now, you'll see it will basically show me where one or the other is true. So why is it showing this one here, for example, way down here, this 4,000 one, when that is not over 5,000? Well, that's because that's a Holland one. Okay, but why is it showing me in Lansing when I ask for Holland? Because that one is over 25,000. So it's only going to be true here for anything over 5. It's got one or the other. It must be true here. So now let's save the query. I'm going to name this query. I'm going to click on the Save button up here. And we're going to name it basically Assignment Items Through. And we've basically done everything in your homework up through number 6. Through items through number 6. So that's just to show you kind of what we've done there to help you with that homework assignment. Now let's close that. Now we're going to do another one. We're going to copy that, and then we're going to make a few changes. Now I could, if I wanted to, I could just start a new query, but I also want to, sometimes you say, well, look, I'm going to make a query that is similar, and I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. So what I can do is copy it. So how do you copy an object? In order to copy an object, step 1, you click on the object, which in this case is Assignment Items Through number 6. We'll click Copy. Then we come over here and click Paste. Now it's saying, all right, what do you want the new one to be? Well, we're going to put in here items, assignment items. I don't know. We're going to put in there, I guess, through 10. Let's do item numbers 6, number 6 through 10. And we'll do a few things with that. So again, in this new query, items 6 through 10, we're going to go in there and go to Design View. We're going to change that. We're going to get rid of these criteria, make a few changes here. But so much of it is already set up for us, we don't want to have to start from scratch. So that is why we've copied it still here. At this point now, what I want to do is to have you click on the signing date field. And we're going to have you click right on the little gray bar there at the very top. Click on it, and it will select. We're going to remove the signing date, and we're going to then we're going to do a totaling here. We're going to simply say how much or what is the sum of the total we have sold to each customer. Now, again, in question number 7 of your homework, they're doing something very similar to that. So we're going to simply do that by coming up here and clicking Totals. Now, when you click Totals, you notice once we do that, it says Group By here. Now, we don't want to change any of those except the contract amount. We want to change the contract amount over to sum. So that will give us the sum of each contract we have by customer. Now, once again, we're going to keep the Holland criteria in here. On the homework, what they're doing is they're using a donation database, and they're simply saying, show us only the cash donations and give us the sum of those. So it's a similar thing here. But here we're simply saying, give us the sum of all of our contracts of the people from Holland. So again, obviously in the homework table, they have a cash, whether it's a cash donation or whatever. So if we run this, you'll see here that Finerty has a total of 55,000 and Owen Haas has 62.5. Owen Haas is 11,005 customer number. Take a look here. If we go over to the agreement table here and we go finding Owen Haas, you'll see there he is right there. Owen Haas has, in fact, a $2,250 one and a $4,000 one. So we see that is in correct here. But you see, it would not have done that had we left the date in there. If you have the date in there, see, it's going to group by. If we put the signing date of the contract in there, you see, it's going to not give us totals because it's going to say, well, this is the total you have on this date of this contract type. And so you see, that's not going to help us. So that's why I had you remove the signing date and the contract type. And that's what the homework is asking you to do. So we have done everything up through now, questions 1 through 7. Now again, we're going to save this for the next session here, but this is all we need to do for now. So the next recording session is going to be the finish of assignment 3 and then all of assignment 4 or tutorial 4. We'll see you in the next session. Thank you.